The 2023 Nissan Z feels like that one nightmare where you're running, but you can't run as fast as you need to from the guy and you wake up all sweaty and you're confused. That's the driving experience of a stock 2023 Nissan Z. We put 4,500 miles on this thing, so we kind of know what we're talking about. I ended up having to reach out to our friends over at BC Racing, Work, Michelin Tires, EBC Brakes, and FI Exhaust to get some parts on this car to see if it will actually fix this sloshy issue that I've had with the driving experience, because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be the next generation sports car from Nissan. So is it any good? Well, today we're at USAir to answer that very question, because honestly, I'm really hoping so. This is a huge waste of money. Now, for a sports car to feel a little bit like a wet rag, you should be upset. Now, I'm upset because the Nissan Z, I just expect more of it from factory. This isn't a $30,000 sports car, it's a $55,000 sports car. And for some people, they're paying 70, 80 G's for this thing, which makes no sense. But we want to start off with one of the first and most important mods in our opinion, and that is the suspension. We went over with BC Racing BR Series coilovers. It gets you 30 clicks of adjustability at the top, but that's not really the main reason we wanted to buy it. We wanted to try it out. It's BC Racing's entry-level coilover. You can get them for right around $1,100 to $1,200. They went in super easy for us because it's a damn near identical installation process to the 370Z. One thing I will say about the monotube design is I really do like how you can adjust the ride height really easy. At the bottom of the wheel up to the fender arch, we're at 26 inches front and rear, and we found that that's right about the perfect spot for how you want this car to look if you want to give it a little bit of a function stance, but also give it a little bit of a show style. The only thing you end up running into is there's these little mud flaps underneath here that end up rubbing anytime you're on a mountain pass. Ask me how I know. We're running a staggered tire setup from Michelin. These are the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's. The 5S's are out there, but they're mostly OE sizes. So we're not gonna talk about this new successor of the 4S. The 4S is probably the perfect, more expensive tire that you can get, but in terms of a daily driver, do-it-all, high performance, you can't beat the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S. We went with a 255/35 ZR19 on the front and a 275/35 ZR19 on the back. By cleaning it up with a nicer, better tire like a Michelin Pilot Sport 4S, we're gonna get rid of a lot of that sidewall flex where it feels like I'm losing connectivity to the car, because this is very responsive through the steering input of the car. It's hard to explain, but if you jump onto a Michelin Pilot Sport 4S and you're wondering why you're a better driver, a lot of that has to do with how the compound and how the tire actually behaves in corners and out of corners, and how that response gets back to you in the steering wheel. Overall, if you're looking for a really good tire and you're not afraid of dishing out just a little bit more cash, the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S just can't be beat. Now, for the wheels, we went with Work ZR10s, 19 by 9.5 plus 23 in the front, 19 by 10.5 plus 15 in the rear. Now, what I can say is that Work wheels look fantastic on this car. I know some people are wondering, why didn't we go with Nismo LM GT4s? Personally, for me, we wanted to give it a little bit of a different look, and Work has some really awesome finishes, and these ones were in stock. So if you're looking to pick up a set of wheels and tires, you can do so at martiniworks.com. Another thing I'm gonna say about this is that the Z comes with forged raised wheels. We decided to change it up because we wanted to fill out the fender a little bit more and still give it a high functioning wheel that was gonna not break the bank, but still be super functional on the track. Another thing I'll say about it is this: Work on the 19-inch wheels for the ZR10s have 3 levels of concavity. We have the most concave wheel on the back of this Z. Then the front, you also are gonna see a good amount of concavity as well. But if you wanna get the most concave ZR10s, you're stuck with getting an 18-inch wheel, because a lot of Japanese wheel brands, they're still sticking to 18 inches for the widest variety of what you can buy. Since we went with 19, we were a little bit limited in terms of the level of concavity we could get. We got the most concave wheel we could throw on the back, and even so, you could probably throw a 285 tire on the back of this, or even come out to like a 10 offset or so on your 10.5 in the rear, and you would still be fine, which just goes to show that the Nissan still makes cars with absolutely wide hips in the rear, which makes you fit some insanely wide wheels. So after spending probably around 3 grand on the wheels, you're spending about 18 to 2 grand on the tires, you're gonna wanna talk about the brakes. Now, we went with EBC rotors and RPX brake pads. Why is that important? Well, because the stock brake pads, in my opinion, just weren't cutting it. The RPX brake pads are a track pad. They also feature what's called like a linear, aggressive cold bite. There are certain cars that come out where it feels like when you press on the pedal, the brake pedal that is, that it takes a little bit before you start to feel that brake get applied. Now, for me personally, I experienced that with the Z. It felt like I needed to give it a little bit more for the car to well, brake. And even though the Akebonos are awesome, what I would say in regards to this is that they do need a step up. And the RPX brake pads were perfect. They eliminated a ton of that feeling. They give it a really strong aggressive cold bite, meaning that I don't have to wait for the brakes to warm up to actually start using them. And because they can handle up to 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, pretty much never gonna get to that point, which gives me a really quality aggressive brake pad with some good rotors that can help keep the heat down. And of course, on top of that whole thing, I can still drive it on the road. Now let me be clear. EBC Brakes does not recommend that you constantly run their track pads on the street, but for us and what we're doing today, it's pretty much a match made in heaven. They're a few $100 and they work absolutely spectacular. And finally, the exhaust. When FI Exhaust reached out to us, they said, why don't we send you the cat as well as the cat back? We just think it's a good idea. And we said, sure, but let's install just the cat back exhaust first, because we want to see how much of a difference it would make to the stock exhaust. And I'm going to be completely honest, if you don't install high flow cats or put catless downpipes on this car and you go with a cat back exhaust, you are not going to hear that much of a difference. It's super unfortunate. It is at no fault of FI Exhaust. They sound absolutely incredible and there is a noticeable difference from factory. But the fact of the matter is now even with an aftermarket exhaust, it sounds like most normal stock sports cars sound, which is super weird to us. Now, FI Exhaust runs a T304 stainless steel. They run a Valvetronic muffler, which means you get a little controller to control if you want the valves open or closed, which is awesome. And it also has a Bluetooth app, which has a whole bunch of diagnostics things that you can do with it as well. You can pick up that exhaust on their website if you're interested. We enjoy the cat back exhaust, but just not enough. We need to throw the high flow cats in here, really make it rumble, and hopefully it does not sound like a straight pipe 370Z, because that would be a disaster. All right, so we're gonna do 2 hot laps first. I gotta remember I'm not drifting.
Hey, yo! You gotta warm the tires up first, bud.
I knew it was gonna be slippery. I didn't expect it to be that slippery.
Your tires are cold.
Well, yeah, but still. Holy sh. All right, one more time. Lap number 2.
Every time I close my eyes.
Lap 3. Everyone always cares about the looks. It's the profile photo versus the tagged shit. I've been there a million times, trust me. But you do want to make sure that if you're about to dump $12,000, $10,000 on a sports car, are the parts actually going to make the car feel any better? The number one thing I will say this car desperately needs above anything else, suspension. The BC Racing BR Series coilovers feel so good on this car because now it feels like when I press the brake, when I turn the car in and that weight shifts to the outside, it feels like it's in a box. Before, it felt like if you had a tub of water and it was all the way at the top, right? And you was just sloshing around, it would go over the edge of the box. That's a terrible analogy, but you know what I mean. On the BC Racing BR Series coilovers, when I go into a turn real hard, sure the weight shifts, but it never feels like it's falling over itself. And that feels incredible. Now, we are out here. It is 44 degrees out here in Wisconsin at USAir right now. And these Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's are doing everything they can to keep me planted. But it is a cold track, so they are gonna slide out just a little bit. But that's not to say that they aren't fantastic tires. You gotta remember, when the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S came out, it was essentially a tire that was seen as a queen of everything. It could do everything. It had fantastic wet conditions. It had fantastic cold conditions. It had fantastic performance conditions. It wasn't necessarily the number one in every class, but it was a number one when you put all those classes together. Last but not least, let's talk about the brakes. The brakes, awesome. And when you are gonna use them, it's nice to know that they're gonna work right away. But I've driven this track now, I don't know, 12, 13 laps. Absolutely no change in the brake feeling, in the responsiveness, in anything that would make me feel uncomfortable about going around these corners. Because as I'm going around these corners, believe it or not, I am making mistakes. I'm not a professional race car driver, not yet. But it is good to know a mod like a good brake pad can be some of the best driver mod helper you could ever ask for. And for a few $100, dude, brakes are just the way to go. Now I like the exhaust. The exhaust is good. Obviously, it's gonna be more of a note, an exhaust note style thing rather than a, functionality style thing, but it is nice to hear the car. It doesn't feel like I've gained any performance from like a power perspective, but the connectivity of the car feels fantastic. I'd be willing to argue, in all honesty, this is how the Z should have came. It should have come with some higher, better brake pads. It should have come with a more sport-oriented exhaust. I really would have liked to see it come with a little bit more sport-oriented suspension. I know they probably saved that for the Nismo Z, but quite honestly, with an automatic only, who's gonna end up buying that? They're all gonna buy this car. So like a college student that decides to use the oven for the first time after microwaving their food for 4 years, yes, this car feels substantially better. It feels like it probably should have from factory considering how much these things cost. But you're gonna have to let me know your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you're looking for parts, mind your cart, martiniworks.com.